Hare Krishna Prabhus, thank you for welcoming me back to your Russian Sangha. Today's lesson in the Founder-Acarya Essentials series is called His Mission's Roots. From the beginning, signs of Abhay Charan De's divine destiny appeared. His birth by the Ganges on Nandotsava, the celebration of Lord Krishna's advent, his childhood devotion to deity worship, especially Rathayatra, Lord Krishna's chariot parade, his pure devotee's father's constant prayer that his son become a great preacher, and his stars and palm affirming that at the age of 70, he would cross the ocean, become a powerful spiritual leader, and open 108 temples. Quote, one astrologer, sometimes he read my hand. He said in Hindi, Hukum chalbe. Your hand speaks that your order will be executed. Unquote. By his own account, in 1922, when Srila Prabhupada and a friend first met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was, quote, Gandhi's devotee, dressed in the white khadi of an Indian nationalist and boycotting all things British. So he was surprised by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's first words to them, quote, you are educated young men. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message throughout the whole world? Impressed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's bold conviction, Abhay nonetheless felt compelled to test him. Quote, who will hear your Chaitanya's message? We are a dependent country. First, India must become independent. How can we spread Indian culture if we are under British rule? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta replied that Krishna consciousness, the original pure consciousness of every living being, was too urgent to wait for a change in politics. Misidentifying with matter, suffering humanity was forever chasing freedom through temporary, earth-bound movements, including Gandhi's. But reconnecting everyone to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and our dearmost friend, constituted the highest welfare work. Struck again by this masterful reply, Abhay's allegiance flew straight from Gandhi to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, whose mission would soon reignite Lord Chaitanya's divine movement throughout India. I accepted him immediately, Prabhupada recalled, not officially, but in my heart, unquote. Already a husband, father, and office manager at a Calcutta pharmaceutical company, Abhay decided to start his own pharmacy, expand the business, and thus contribute to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's mission. So in 1923, he moved his family to Allahabad and started Prayag Pharmacy, which soon flourished under his diligent management. His sense of mission would also flourish as he studied the writings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and his Gaudiya predecessors, the disciplic lineage from Lord Chaitanya. Initiation. In 1928, when senior sannyasis approached Abhay for help starting a branch of the Gaudiya mission in Allahabad, he was delighted to contribute his contacts and resources, and later became a favorite speaker and singer at the temple. By 1932, it had been 10 years since Abhay met the saintly person he revered as his spiritual master. Excuse me, I have to take a drink. That autumn, when he heard that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was leading a massive parikrama, or pilgrimage around Vrindavan, the sacred place of Krishna's early pastimes. He briefly broke free from his business to join the pilgrims. Soon after he arrived at Kosi, the devotees were given the choice of visiting the nearby Sheshashayi Vishnu deity or staying to hear Srila Bhaktisiddhanta give his final talk before leaving the Parikram party. Prabhupada, quote, "At that time, I think only 10 or 12 men remained, and I thought it wise. What can I see at this Sheshashayi? Let me hear what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati will speak. Let me hear," unquote. In 1933, while Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was visiting his mission's new branch at Allahabad, the local leader recommended Abhay for initiation. Quote, "Yes, I shall initiate this boy," Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said. "He is very nice. He hears me very patiently. He does not go away," unquote. Although Abhai's wife chose not to attend the ceremony, a brother and sister were present as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gave Abhai the initiated name, Abhai Charanaravinda Das, the servant, quote, "the servant of one fearless at Lord Krishna's lotus feet," unquote. He also gave his capable disciple instructions to study deeply Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Prabhupada would later summarize as the nectar of devotion, the, quote, "law book for devotional service." Prabhupada recalled, quote, "From 1922, I got the impression of preaching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's cult. That was the initiation by my Guru Maharaj. Then, officially, I was initiated in 1933. Interesting that Prabhupada considers the essence of his initiation is to be the preaching spirit instilled in him from the very first meeting, 11 years before his formal diksha. Over the next few years, Abhai would meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta perhaps a half dozen times, yet the talks were intimate enough to raise eyebrows. Prabhupada, "Sometimes, quote, sometimes I would talk freely with him, and the godbrothers would become angry. They would say, 'Fools rush in where angels fear to tread.' I thought, I may be a fool, but what can I do? With my Guru Maharaj, we would talk so many private things. I was only a grihasta, family man. But whenever I came, my Guru Maharaj would be very glad to talk with me," unquote. Blessings. Although an astrologer had predicted Abhai could become one of the wealthiest men in India, in 1934, bad debtors and cutthroat competitors obliged him to turn over the debts and accounts of the Prayag pharmacy to his supplier and former employer in Calcutta. After leaving a small pharmaceutical works to support his family in Allahabad, Abhai and a brother ventured to Bombay, seeking new sales and production opportunities. Lord Krishna, it turned out, had greater opportunities in mind. As in Allahabad, Abhai met senior Gaudiya Math sannyasis, who asked him to help them start a mission branch in Bombay. His preaching increasing since initiation, Abhai soon helped them launch a successful center. On the evening of February 25th, 1935, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's 61st birthday, Abhai delivered an English speech and poem to the members of the Bombay Gaudiya Math, capturing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and his mission so eloquently that a godbrother dubbed him Kavi, quote, learned poet. Especially pleasing to his spiritual master was the couplet, quote, absolute sentient, thou hast proved impersonal calamity, thou hast moved, unquote. When Habai submitted the speech and poem to the mission's English journal, The Harmonist, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta instructed the editor, whatever he writes, publish it. That July, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came to install the deity of Lord Krishna in Bombay and was pleased with the progress of the center. The leader said that, quote, much of the work was due to Abai Babu, who had collected funds and established the new branch. Why is Abai living separately? He asked. He should be president of this Bombay center. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati replied, it is better that he is living outside your company. He will do. When the time comes, he will do everything himself. You don't have to recommend him. Mystified by what he heard his spiritual master had said, Prabhupada later reflected, quote, that means he was so kind that he expected that I shall do something. That was my asset, his blessing. And I was thinking that this mission must be done very nicely. So desire was there, and maybe blessing was there. Yes, there was no question of qualification, unquote. November once again found Abai with his spiritual master on Vrindavan Parikrama, this time at the most sacred place for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Radha Kund. Walking with his intimate disciple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta confided in Abai grave concerns about dissension among the ranks. Since a wealthy Calcutta patron had constructed palatial headquarters for the mission, his senior disciples had been quarreling over who would have the best room. If in his presence his leading preachers were becoming attached to position and opulence, what would happen in his absence? So what follows is going to be an excerpt from Prabhupada Lilamrita, where this historic exchange is taking place at Radhakund. Deeply concerned, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said to Abai, Agun Jvalbe, there will be fire. One day there would be fire in the Calcutta Gaudiya mission, and that fire of party interests would spread and destroy. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta then said directly to Abai, Amar ichha chila kichu bai karana. I had a desire to print some books. If you ever get money, print books. Standing by Radhakund and beholding his spiritual master, Abai felt the words deeply enter his own life. If you ever get money, print books. Also, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, I wish I could take the marble from that palatial new headquarters, the marble palace in Bagh Bazaar, take it out of the temple and just sell it and print books. That's how disgusted he was with what was going on, people fighting over opulent rooms. He wanted to print books, and he was lamenting to our Prabhupada that my leading preachers are losing the preaching spirit. They're getting distracted by opulence. So that grave blessing mirrored a grave reality in Abai's life. Although he was trying to execute his spiritual master's mission by becoming wealthy, his Bombay business ventures were not bearing fruit. Despite Abai's assurance he had new plans to expand, his situation especially disturbed his wife. Whenever Abai visited his family in Allahabad, He tried to involve her in preaching programs at home, but when interested guests would come, she stayed with the children in another room, sipping British tea. Confirmation. Although Abai had already contributed much to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's Gaudiya mission, donating money, helping launch the Allahabad and Bombay centers, submitting excellent English offerings, in December 1936, he wrote his spiritual master a letter, asking if there was some way he could contribute more. Prabhupada later recalled the highlights of his spiritual master's reply. Quote, "I am fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. I have every hope that you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate the novel impression of Lord Chaitanya's teachings in the people in general, as well as philosophers and religionists." Little more than a fortnight after Abai read this letter, his spiritual master passed away. The same instruction he had received at their first meeting was now confirmed. Another confirmation followed while Abai was reading a Bhagavad Gita commentary, stating that one must accept the order of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's order was now the very purpose of his life. War. The quote, "fire in the mission" broke out almost immediately. Although Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had clearly ordered his disciples to form a governing body and work, quote, "conjointly," some leaders began competing to replace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta as the mission's supreme spiritual authority, as well as the controller of its assets. The fighting ended up in the courts, but because none of the parties was authorized, the unified Gaudiya mission Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had led throughout India and beyond fragmented into isolated temples. Quote, "living outside, Abai felt inspired and protected by the order Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had given him. Yet the breakup of the Gaudiya mission was heartbreaking. In 1938, he dropped his Bombay ventures and moved his family back to Calcutta. To maintain, he began to produce pharmaceuticals in the front room of his flat. This was in a flat on an address called Sitakanta Banerjee Lane. Deepening his study of his spiritual master's books, he spoke Krishna conscious philosophy to whoever would listen, determined to somehow carry on Lord Chaitanya's movement. In 1939, Abai wrote an introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, indicating his intention to translate and comment on the entire text. Impressed by Abhai's writing and preaching, two sannyasi godbrothers gave him the title Bhakti Vedanta, quote, "one who knows the end of knowledge, devotion to Krishna." When World War II broke out that year, England drafted India into the war effort. In Calcutta, Abai would endure bombs and man-made food shortages as he and a few close godbrothers, survivors of the Gaudiya mission's implosion, continued to study, write, and preach the remedy for all suffering, Krishna consciousness. In 1944, on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's birthday anniversary, Abai launched a devotional journal, Back to Godhead, offering spiritual solutions to material life's endless problems. BTG saw print only twice that year, owing to the Indian government's severe rationing of supplies, including paper. Abhai's messages were scarcely noticed, much less valued. Even less so at home. After the war ended in 1945, Abhai saw a good opportunity to expand his pharmaceutical operation in Lucknow, 600 miles northwest of Calcutta. With enough profit potential to expand BTG and better situate his family, Abhai made a big capital investment. I think it was something like 20,000 rupees. It was practically his whole savings. But when he called the family's best servant to come help him, the family would not let him go. Indifferent to Abhai's preaching ambitions, or even an opportunity to improve their own living standard, the family he was supporting was now becoming a useless burden. In a letter dated November 13th, 1945, a disgusted Abhai wrote his servant, quote, "What's the point in holding you back with an excuse that there is no servant or maidservant? I tried to serve them enough by keeping enough servants, maidservants, and cooks. But up until today, they have not become attached to devotional service. So I am no more interested about those affairs." Unquote. Even before this development, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had begun appearing to Abhai in dreams, asking him to enter the renounced stage of life and preach full time. But he felt unprepared to live as simply as his renounced godbrothers. So, Prabhupada would later recall, those dreams horrified him. Uncooperative though his family was, he dutifully continued to maintain them while looking for opportunities to advance his mission. So, attention at this point. Prabhus, please start thinking of questions and or comments you'd like to make after I finish soon. Next section is called The Spark. Although victorious in the war, Britain would soon lose India to Mahatma Gandhi's nationalist movement. The triumph of his former hero gave Abhai an idea. In July 1947, Abhai wrote Gandhi a letter. An excerpt follows. Quote, "I am your unknown friend. You should therefore take a note of warning from your insignificant friend like me, that unless you retire timely from politics and engage yourself 100% in the preaching work of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas, you shall have to meet with such inglorious deaths as Mussolini, Hitler's, Tojo's met with." 6 months later, Gandhi was assassinated. Prabhupada later recalled, quote, "I wanted to start this movement from India. I even requested Mahatma Gandhi that, Mahatmaji, you have got some respect all over the world, and you are known as a great student of Bhagavad Gita. Now you have got your Swaraj. The Britishers have gone away. Let us preach Bhagavad Gita." My letter might have reached him or not reached him. The secretaries might have rejected. But then he was killed. Abhai's letter now proved prophetic. Although he had hoped to engage Gandhi to advance Lord Chaitanya's mission, Gandhi's demise would soon spark the articulation of his mission's plan. As Prabhupada later reflected, "I had my plans and Krishna had his." Okay. So Prabhus, I'll be very happy now to receive your questions and comments. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Sureshvara Prabhu. I just wanted to say that what you said about the preaching spirit is the essence of initiation from Srila Prabhupada's point of view. That is very inspiring, very inspiring. And you also talked about the qualification. Throughout your presentation, you were mentioning how Prabhupada grew and what was qualification was to fulfill his master's order.
I couldn't quite follow what you were saying, Sati. You were asking me to speak something about Prabhupada's qualification to be initiated. Is that it?
No, I'm just saying that you were talking about that in your presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and that the main. Did I understand it right? That the preaching spirit was his main qualification.
No, not actually. I mean, that's how Prabhupada took his real initiation was the preaching spirit, but what inspired Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to initiate Abhay Charan was the fact that Prabhupada loved to hear him. And when that Braj Mandal Parikrama happened in 1932, Prabhupada told us that almost everybody went to see this spectacular Vishnu deity nearby, because it was Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother, who made the announcement. Okay, Prabhus, today is the last day Guru Maharaj will be with us on the parikrama, so he's giving us a choice. We can either go see the nearby Sheshashayi Vishnu deity, or we can stay and hear him speak. So Prabhupada said that almost everybody went to see that deity. And only a handful of sannyasis, and I think he was the only householder, except there was one elderly a really old man who went. And then Prabhupada told us, Guru Maharaj, he was speaking in a very high philosophical way. Sometimes I could follow him, sometimes I couldn't follow him, but I just loved to hear him speak. And so Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took note of that, because gradually during that evening darshan and talk, everybody was leaving. And pretty soon it was only Prabhupada and a couple of sannyasis. And so Prabhupada stayed until the very end. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took notice of that. Yes, I will initiate this boy, he said later, when he came to Allahabad. He likes to hear me. He likes to hear me patiently. He does not go away. I have marked him. That's another thing he said. I have marked him. So he noticed. So yeah, but from Prabhupada's side, it was interesting that Prabhupada, with hindsight, looking back, because Bhaktisiddhanta had startled him. You are an educated young man. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya's message all over the world? So that was when they were just getting up from bowing down, to see the sadhu. So looking back on that was the seed, and then that seed, or that request was confirmed later on when Prabhupada in 1936 wrote that letter just a couple of weeks before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance. And by then, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had seen in Abhay Charanaravinda Das a disciple who actually would be capable of doing what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was asking them all to do. Cooperate to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And he could see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta could see what was going to happen to his own mission. There will be fire in the mutt, he had said a year earlier, in November 35. But he was confiding to the person who became our Prabhupada. If you ever get money, print books. He was seeing the end of his own organization, mission, the Gaudiya Math, but he was seeing in the person of our Prabhupada somebody who would be capable of reviving it. So it was extraordinary. And when Prabhupada heard about later, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had visited Bombay in the summer, and it was Bhakti Saranga Maharaj said, actually, I'm very glad you're pleased, Guru Maharaj, but it's Abhay Babu. He's so a good organizer, preacher, singer. He should be the president. So Bhaktisiddhanta, famously said, no, you don't, it's better he's living outside your company. You don't have to recommend him. He will do everything himself. And so when Prabhupada heard about that, he was like mystifying. What does that mean? What does Guru Maharaj mean? And then in Prabhupada's last year, it was on a train ride in January 1977. Or it was just after the train ride. Yeah, it was January 13th. Prabhupada confided to a few devotees that looking back at the success he had, it was all due to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's blessings. He expected that I will do this. He blessed me. And Prabhupada humbly was saying, it wasn't my qualification. That's the way Prabhupada always spoke. He always gave all credit to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and to us. Amazingly, his monkey-like disciples, just try to follow the regulative principles. So, Prabhupada got all the mercy because he surrendered all the way. And that's a good lesson for us. If we want to be empowered, it's proportional to the depth of our surrender. So, okay, I hope that's all right, Sati Prabhu. Any more questions or comments?
Yes, thank you very much. And our next question is, why is second initiation so important?
Why is second initiation so important? Did we talk about this last time?
No, I don't believe we did.
Okay.
I think probably you have a lot of...
too many Zooms. Yeah, right. Okay, because this comes up a lot. And when I took Bhanu Swami's seminar on Shiksha Diksha at the last ILS in Mayapur, he amazed us because Bhanu Maharaj pointed out that if you study Prabhupada's complete Vani on this issue of first initiation, second initiation, Shiksha, Shiksha Gurus, Diksha Gurus, you can make a good case from just Prabhupada's words, not going to other Sampradayas or other Gaudiya Sanghas or anything. Just you can make a good case just from Prabhupada's words in the letters and in the books and the conversations, etc., for either first initiation being sufficient to go back to Godhead, or second. He said different things at different times according to the people that were asking him about these things. So that's why, especially with the spoken word, we really have to know context. Which our Vishnu Murti Prabhu is always pointing out on our Sabha Sangha. Yeah, why did Prabhupada say different things at different times? Anyway, it was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta who started this two-step process. First, Harinam. It's like giving a chance for people to see how sincere they are. I mean, you got to be sincere just to get Harinam. Agree to follow the regular principles and work cooperatively with the devotees and chant prescribed number of rounds. But then you see how the candidate does. So it's like a first step. And then if the candidate proves over time that he or she is serious, then you're sticking with the regulative principles, you're not giving them up, and you're ready to advance further. Then Gayatri Diksha comes, and that qualifies us to, especially as Prabhupada made it very clear, to come closer to the deity, worship the deity with Gayatri Diksha. And to speak on the Bhagavatam. So that's what that is meant for. It's a recognition of seriousness and sincerity. But what is it? Is it just like some kind of award and that's it? No, it means you're being invited by the parampara in the person of your spiritual master to step up and increase your service. So it's a second initiation. Initiation means beginning. It's a second beginning. It's a new beginning. Okay, now we step up and now we begin to serve the deity more and share the scripture more. So it's very important. And since Prabhupada said different things at different times about which was more important, we just take it that it's all important. It's all important. It's important to take that first step. It's important to take the next step and to keep going. It's all an invitation by the parampara to go all the way back home, back to Godhead. Okay, good question. Any more?
Yes, Srila Prabhupada started giving initiations, first and second, to women, right? And sometimes I hear that it was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati who started this, but other people say it was Srila Prabhupada who was the first to do it. Can you give us a little bit clarification on that?
Okay, there was a WhatsApp something, I missed a crucial point and I couldn't hear because there was another noise. So it sounds, I think I know what the question is. Who started the process of giving, was it second initiation to women? Was it Bhaktisiddhanta?
Before them, women were not given initiations at all. Is that correct?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had lady disciples. In fact, one of them was Prabhupada's own sister. Yeah, Pishima, Bhavatarini, Devi Dasi. That was her Dikshanam. Bhavatarini, Devi Dasi, Prabhupada's own sister who looked a lot like Prabhupada. She was not only Prabhupada's sister, she was his god sister too. So Prabhupada was following in Guru Maharaj's footsteps. So he also initiated ladies. I'm just wondering about Gayatri though, because if you know the history of, I think it was last time we mentioned this, that of how ladies first received Gayatri from Prabhupada. It was in Boston in 1968 in May, and Prabhupada was holding Gayatri initiation, but he didn't call Govinda Dasi or Jadharani, two of his leading lady disciples, to get the initiation. And so they made a fuss because they were, American ladies. They didn't know about being submissive or anything like that. They were liberated ladies from the 1960s. So they got mad. And Govinda says, so when I heard that some men were getting Gayatri initiation, and her husband was one of them, but we weren't. So I pouted. I stayed home and I was sulking. I was mad. And I didn't want to go. The word boycott, we were going to stay away as a protest. But then at the last minute, I thought, what am I doing? I've got to see this. I've got to go. So she ran all the way to 95 Glenville Avenue in Boston, this first little house, tiny house. And she sat in. So Prabhupada saw that Jadharani and Govinda were feeling discouraged. And so he thought it was no big deal. So he gave them second initiation too. He gave them Gayatri. So it started right there. And then we have this beautiful picture in 1971 or 2, I forget. Let's see, I think it was 72, actually. Prabhupada in Mayapur, we have Prabhupada showing our Vishaka Prabhu, Yadabar's good wife. He's not only giving her second initiation, but he's showing her how to count on his own fingers. And he's really leaning close to her, and they're both like right there, you know, and she's looking at Prabhupada's fingers, and it's a beautiful picture of Prabhupada showing her how to count all 10 mantras on the 10 spots on the fingers, finger joints. Yeah. So, yeah, because traditionally in Vedic culture, a lady would get the adhikar of her husband, and there was no need to initiate her, you know, separately. She would just follow her husband, and she would share in the adhikar of the husband. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he was initiating ladies, and Prabhupada was initiating ladies and men, husbands and wives, separately. So it wasn't just that the husband was the pati guru of the wife, and then that was it. No, Prabhupada separately gave the lady Gayatri if she was qualified. So, okay, good question.
And why do you think he started doing this? You know, as well as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhu.
Why did they make it 2 steps?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I have the trilogy from Bhakti Vikash Maharaj. I'm sure it's in there. I haven't even read it yet, although he personally signed my copy way back in 2011, I think it was. I still haven't read it, sitting on my shelf. Then I'd have to just, I mean, it's a reasonable guess, but I hate to, I can't say anything authoritatively. Although I'll just tell you my educated guess, but with the caveat, with the warning that it has to be confirmed, and I'm sure it's in there, that it's Kali Yuga, and in Kali Yuga things are taken very cheaply. Even in Prabhupada's time, even in initiation lectures, he would say things. So initiation means to begin. Not that, now I'm initiated, business finished, boss. And then people, and that, because that's a very, I guess it was a common phenomenon. You know, people doing that in India, they would, and then it would be taken cheaply. So when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta revived Gaudiya Vaishnavism in an organized way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had revived it philosophically, and culturally, but he didn't have time to start a movement, and he got his Ray of Vishnu's son to take it to the next level by actually starting an organized Sangha, the Gaudiya Mat, the Gaudiya mission. Then that's something that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta obviously felt needed to be done, to break it into 2 steps, to see if someone was serious. So I guess I'd have to do some more research. It just seems that's what I'm inferring as something that he thought needed to be done, because of we're so unqualified in Kali Yuga. Yeah, traditionally, back in the Vedic times, the days of yore, as Prabhupada says, initiation means Gayatri. You know, the whole thing. Harinam, you get the name, you get the Gayatri mantra. But yeah, so the Acharya, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Acharya with a capital A, he has to make, he sees certain adjustments have to be made according to time, place, circumstance. So Prabhupada followed in his Guru Maharaj's footsteps. And he would also say, yeah, it doesn't mean business finished. And Prabhupada would really be angry if somebody got second initiation and then fell away. It was bad enough if a temple president recommended to Prabhupada that somebody be given first initiation, because Prabhupada would even say things. It's like a chance, it's like a trial. But then when the initiation process was completed by Gayatri Diksha, and then the person fell away, then Prabhupada, in 1974, there are letters to this effect. In January, I did some research on this recently for my temple president here, Sandamani Mataji, who wanted some material about the seriousness of second initiation for a situation here that was going on. So I found this material. Prabhupada was, in the beginning of 1974, people were getting second initiation and then leaving, and then Prabhupada was saying, this is a mockery, this is a farce. Don't recommend people just because you need a cook and a pujari if they're not qualified. Don't just do it out of expedience. It's a recognition of qualification. So that's interesting. I should make a note here to find that out, because Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, he does have good indexes. I'm sure I can find it in there. Okay, good question. Okay, any more?
Yes, thank you very much. I think these are all comments and questions that we've got so far today. And we are really grateful for your wonderful narration about Srila Prabhupada and your kind association and Sangha. Thank you very much.
Now, as a transition to the next lesson in 2 weeks, which will be on Sunday the 25th, here's what I say. In lesson 5, we'll see how the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi triggered the articulation of Srila Prabhupada's mission. Introduced in the 1950s first as the League of Devotees, then fully launched in the 1960s as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So it's very interesting. There's a continuum. Even before the League of Devotees, Prabhupada, when he was proposing to the Indian government how to properly memorialize Gandhi, Prabhupada was talking about something called the Gita Nagari. It's a scheme Prabhupada had for honoring Gandhi by having the government support a community based on the teachings of Gandhi's book of inspiration, the Gita. So it went from the Gita Nagari scheme to the League of Devotees. Gita Nagari was the 40s, 1940s. League of Devotees was the 50s. And finally in the 60s, we have ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And you see a common thread. You see common points, mission points in all of these schemes. So Prabhupada is gradually developing his mission, the mission that his spiritual master had given him to preach in English and all over the world. So it's very fascinating. And it's also fascinating how Prabhupada is trying to use Gandhi's name as a way to get people interested in the mission. That's next time in 2 weeks. Spasiba. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.